Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to talk about why we do not need to raise minimum wage federally in America. So if you guys are unfamiliar with this, federally it is $7.25 for minimum wage. In California, then you're making $14 to $15. Currently, we're all kind of in that limbo just because it's a new year and we're trying to increase it, at a steady rate. But if you're in, the Bay Area or LA and counties like that, then you are going to be making that 15 already, and that is the minimum wage for them. However, there are 3 reasons why we should not increase minimum wage federally. So the first reason being, if we raise minimum wage, then it will raise unemployment levels. The second reason being, it'll increase prices. Prices as in gas, groceries, and so on, things that we buy because we're the consumer. So third, the last reason that we should not raise minimum wage is because companies will resort to alternatives instead of having to pay that minimum wage. Get into those a little bit later. Touching back on that first base, when you raise the minimum wage, it does affect unemployment levels, according to Investopedia. By raising it specifically to the amount of $15 federally, then it would be great in helping, 27 million people, and would help them a lot with things like home, just basic expenses, bills. However, it would affect 1.3 million jobs. Not just a small effect, but it would be the effect of not having jobs. So we're sacrificing 1.3 million jobs. We're terminating them to only benefit 27 million people, which is a big difference. And that's not something you want because it's bad, again, going into the unemployment levels. So another part of that is that companies can't actually afford to pay such high wages to a lot of their workers. When you do this, then it leads into this very competitive field, and most people that are employed in minimum wage jobs are around, a teenage age to the age of about 25, again, according to Investopedia. And when you're doing this, then it does make it harder, and specifically it makes it more competitive for, teenagers or young adults, probably like most of us now, or even certain adults maybe who have a lower skill level, and it just is not doable for everyone. So it is very unfair. Some people may say it's discriminative. When you get into the increased prices in contrast to raising minimum wage, one thing to look at is that childcare, just during COVID specifically, has increased 47% inside facilities. So this is, hypothetically like a daycare that you may see, or like after school programs. But again, from that, then we see it has also increased 70% at home-based cares. So maybe like a daycare of your neighbor or just someone locally in your area. Sometimes this can even be, put in the same category as a church. That's from CNBC. And after this, then we see from the increased prices, then it again goes back into that idea of unemployment. And unemployment has been linked to an inflation, which currently we've all kind of been going through, especially during COVID and the whole pandemic. And as you can see, the government has literally had to give out money in stimulus checks, or even I can't think of the name, but they've given out checks for the child care in order to help them pay for, things, again, like child care, because people are not able to afford that with the wages, and then even being cut, pandemic isn't always normal, but for us right now, that is the case. And then that is from an Investopedia. And then next, we also see that if the prices of goods go up, then it also drives small businesses out of business. Because if you're a small business, typically you want to make a profit from things, even if it's maybe handmade or maybe you've bought it and you're reselling. One issue with that is that hypothetically, if you're taking, let's say, I'll use an example of this AirPod case, and I want to sell it, I want to charge $20 for that, and it's very simple. I bought it off of Amazon for $5. People do not want to pay that because they know that there is an alternative, and it's just not doable, not ideal. No one wants to pay for that. And then again, that's from Investopedia. And along with those businesses having to sell at such a high rate, they also would not be able to meet that pay level for their employees because they probably will not be selling the same amount of things because of that increased price, and people do not want to pay that. Last, we see that some companies have taken an alternative to actually having to enforce minimum wage. One thing about this from cato.org is that high paying jobs, instead of, actually paying, are turning to things like technology, or like what we may think of like as robots. If you've ever seen the Amazon videos, you definitely see products being carried on, like, I don't know, it looks like a cart instead of people physically transporting them. So that just eliminates only so many number of jobs. Then we see that the people who are still in those jobs, in those industries, are actually tending to the technology or the robots, and they're just keeping up maintenance and, making sure, if there's a problem, they can troubleshoot it. Last but this point, then we also see that the workers who are there doing those jobs are highly skilled, and not everyone will train those people for those jobs. And because they're so highly skilled, it's such a small number of people who really get hired, because not everyone has that exposure or the education for it. So overall, again, we should not increase minimum wage because it raises unemployment rates, it increases prices in our market, and companies will have to resort to alternatives like more technology, creating, again, less jobs.